Hey guys, welcome back. I am Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports in Westfield, Indiana, and you are watching Marksman TV. Welcome back to another gun store vlog. Now the question of the week this week will be, does your gun store, your local gun store, do they want anti-gun representatives in office or positions of power? That might sound like a weird question, but we'll get into that and kind of explain that a little bit. Also, as always, if you are only here for the question of the week, I will have a timestamp pinned to the top of the comment section. You can click on that timestamp. It'll bypass all the inventory stuff and take you there. Keep in mind, a lot of my locals like to see the inventory stuff, so that is usually the first part of the video. Click on that timestamp, skip over that, get to the question of the week. Anyway, guys, we will jump into it now. Alright, so some of the things you guys did kind of see other videos on is I did get in the new Glock Model 43X and the Model 48, which I've already uploaded videos on, but here we go. I'm actually pretty happy about how quickly we got these. My distributor is actually Mike over at RSR. If you guys are ever interested in starting a gun store and looking for distributors, call RSR and ask for Mike. He's awesome. He really gets me some hard to get stuff. So I really appreciate everything he does. But that was the Model 48. And here is the 43X. I'm sure by the time I upload this video, both of these will be sold. I don't know when I'm going to be getting more of these in, but hopefully soon if Mike helps me out over there. Okay, as always, I like to keep in the surplus stuff. I did get a couple more surplus firearms. I did get the CZ82s, the 9x18mm Makarov handguns. These have been a little bit tough to get in recent years. Fantastic firearms. Of course, they're not really a Makarov, but a lot of people like to lump them into that category. CZ handguns keep a lot of collectability. A lot of people love them, especially these older ones. Now, the 83, which we have had in the past, those are 380s. Those were commercial export models only. These are actually used by military and police in the Makarov round. But anyway, I mean, for around $300 in excellent condition, these are just a great bargain and an excellent handgun to kind of consider. And of course, if you're local, you remember about 2 months ago, I did get in some of the Hungarian Fegs. We sold out of all of those in like 2 days, especially at the price point. We had them at like $289. Now I got in another batch. These are in much better condition, a little bit more expensive at $320, but still on Gunbroker, you're seeing these things go up well over $400 pretty routinely. So I don't have a lot of them left. I'm actually doing this vlog about a week after I got this stuff in. I was really busy actually with those Glock videos that you guys saw. But anyway, so I just wanted to kind of show you guys those. Those are just really cool high power clones. If you want to get into a high power, you don't want to pay the Browning high power prices of like $700-800. This is a good alternative. These are pretty neat that you don't see too many of. These are the Browning Wingmaster 151, or I'm sorry, the Browning Fieldmaster 151, it's not a shotgun, 22 pump. These sorts of things, like the old Winchester Gallery guns, little pump 22s, are sort of iconic. You used to see these sorts of things at carnivals, at little shooting booths. If you believe it or not, actually going to a carnival and shooting 22 rifles into a trap. Definitely not going to happen today, but very iconic. Excellent little rifles, little squirrel or rabbit guns. Lots of people grew up with these, but of course before my time. But just excellent craftsmanship on these things, really cool little rifles. Now I have started kind of playing a little bit with the Swiss Model 89s. Now you guys have seen behind me the 9611s and the 1911s that I've had. These would have, of course, predated that. You did have a larger box magazine, and this was chambered in the older cartridge. So if you ever get one of these, you cannot load that more modern, I think they call it the GP11 ammunition, the 75x55 Swiss. So they are, unless you want to reload yourself, they are more or less cool wall hangers, but they are in excellent condition and they are antiques, so you do not need an FFL to buy one. And because they're antiques, there's no import marks or anything like that on them too, so these are cool. One of the main reasons I got this in is because I own a 9611, a 1911, a K11, and a K31, and I want to do the Schmidt-Rubin straight pull rifle series kind of video history and buyer's guide on those. So that'll be coming soon, hopefully next week. Here's one more kind of interesting thing you don't see too often that came in. This is a Intratec, known colloquially as a Tech 9. This is of course the DC9. This would have been the earlier version. before the ban, where you had the Clinton ban, where this was actually banned by name because it had things like a heat shroud, a forward-mounted magazine. I don't really remember the ins and outs entirely, but this was something that was used heavily in like California, Florida, by a lot of gangs, and showed up a lot in crimes. Of course, it was made infamous at the Columbine shooting as well, unfortunately there. Anyway, they are pretty junky little pistols, but they are very iconic. They kind of do scream the 90s when you look at them. So if you've seen a lot of those old 80s and 90s action movies, these typically do show up. They do have a 32 round stick magazine, and then this sort of barrel extension that doesn't really do anything that you can thread on there as well. Sort of an interesting thing. But anyway, it's kind of cool when these show up. We've had a few of these over the past years, and they're just kind of weird. And they always sell quickly. There's always buyers for them. Okay guys, that's it for you on the inventory side of the vlog. Let's go ahead and jump into the question of the week, and that is, does your local gun store owner want anti-gun politicians and places of power? And that sounds kind of like a counterintuitive question, but it's one I get pretty often in my gun store. The main premise being, well, when you have anti-gun politicians pushing for all this anti-gun legislation, it usually drives up the sales. And what we're seeing politically now is, since we have a pro-gun president in office, therefore there isn't a whole lot of pressure or stress on the gun-owning community that their rights will be taken away. Now, that's not to say that we should ever kind of forget that that's sort of always under attack, but you don't hear the rhetoric as often, and the rhetoric really affects people mainly, in my opinion, of those people who aren't necessarily gun owners yet, but because they think guns are about to be banned or AR-15s are about to be banned, they've always had in the back of their mind, I might want to own one of those one day, I might as well get it now. So that's the type of buyer that we see in instances like this. So when you have anti-gun politicians, especially like an anti-gun president like Obama, usually you hear that rhetoric constantly. It keeps tensions high, therefore sales are higher. So is that not something a gun store would want? Well, of course a gun store wants sales to be higher. That's kind of the basis of why we're here, but I can only speak for myself, but I can venture a guess that most other gun store owners are the same way, and their thought here is that, of course, we don't want anti-gun legislation. It's like saying, okay, you have a grocery store and they're in favor of the FDA banning half of the products that they sell. If I'm a gun store, I mean, I sell a lot of AR-15s, not so many recently since President Trump's been elected, but you know, they are still a viable product. It is a product line that we move a pretty good portion of. Of course, I don't want that to be banned. And we're talking the business side, because the question is usually focused from a business perspective. Do you want guns to be under attack so that your business is higher? So on the business side of things, well, why would I want a portion of my inventory to be taken off the shelves? If they are banned, then I have all that money in that inventory that I can't move, you know, and it's kind of sitting here. I guess if they had a grandfather clause, I could take it home and have 20 or 30 ARs at home, which I guess nobody would complain about, but that's not why I'm here. You know, those exist for me to sell and to keep the store running, so that would be counterintuitive. Now, if all guns were banned, and I think that that's a far shot, not to say that people don't try, but that would be, you know, to do that we would need to ratify the Second Amendment, which isn't very likely at this point in time that that's going to happen. You have to have the majority of this. I think, again, I'm not really heavily into the politics side of things, but I think you would need a 2/3 majority vote amongst the states to abolish a constitutional amendment. So I think that we're not really at risk of that happening. But definitely subsets of firearms being banned and controlled is something that is always a threat. Now on the political side of things, or at least on the fact that I and other gun store owners, we are very, 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 very much pro-gun people. Of course we are. We're in the business of buying and selling firearms, and this is sort of a labor of love. This is something you do because you really enjoy the community and you enjoy firearms, you enjoy the shooting sports, you enjoy self-defense. That's why we're in it. We're not in it for the money, because there's not really, that would be the wrong reasons to get into it, because really you put in a lot more work than you get out of it, at least initially in my perspective. Now the other side of that question, when people say, well, don't you want anti-gun legislation to keep pressure on firearms to keep the sales up. Well, here's one thing. So if you go back to 2013, now that was just a year before we opened, and that was when the demand for firearms was really at a peak because of, Sandy Hook had happened. We started Obama's second term, and he had vowed to really go heavy after things like AR-15s, the quote-unquote assault rifles. But that's when you saw the demand for ARs and AKs, or AKMs, and the ammunition for both, and any other type of scary featured rifle. You saw the prices go up, you saw the availability go down. Now, when we opened our store, I still caught through 2014 and even 2015 some of the repercussions of that. And that was that inventory was incredibly hard to get. So say you have 30 ARs in your inventory and politics goes such a way, like we speculated on this and every other gun store did too. If Hillary Clinton had won, demand for those 30 AR-15s in my store would have exploded. And I probably would have sold every single one in a matter of 2 days. And people would say, well, wouldn't that be fantastic? Think about the sales volume and the revenue there. But what happens when those 30 ARs are gone? I have to sit on wait lists just to get a junk, bottom of the barrel entry level AR. I have to wait and hope to get it. And then when I do, I have to pay. Those inflated prices, that wasn't always the gun stores. That was wholesalers, that was manufacturers. When demand goes up, the manufacturers are going to charge more, the wholesalers are going to charge more, and therefore the retailer is going to have to charge more. That's not to say that there wasn't a lot of price gouging, and there was. But a lot of that was a factor of the market, sort of the viability of the market at that time. So, like I said, you sell out of all that inventory and then you don't get anything else to sell. And in a normal market, what I would love to do is sell those 30 ARs over the course of 3, 4, 5 months, but then be able to replace them. That makes a lot more sense than selling out of everything and then having to, you're able to restock one here and one there. So just a long-term viability of that plan, not as good as just when you're in a steady, normal market. And then along with that too, we are gun store owners and gun stores, but we're also enthusiasts. As I mentioned before, you open this because it's a labor of love. Of course, we don't want to see firearms banned or any sort of legislation come through the pipeline on that, because our personal lives of being people who enjoy firearms, well, just like yours, that gets totally infringed upon. So I would say, if you think about it from a personal perspective and from a business perspective, gun store owners are hugely incentivized to keep firearm ownership open and free, and to not have regulation or stipulation on any of that. Another question I get on this too, kind of in that same vein, is universal background checks. Would a gun store want universal background checks, i.e. every single private sale that you do has to take place inside a gun store, and they can charge you a transfer fee for that. Now think about that. That is a legitimate, I will be honest, if that were to happen, transfer fees, at least in my business and everywhere else, would go way up. Now there are going to be a lot of people who don't adhere to that law, and that's totally their prerogative, but a lot of people will, and then they would have to come into a gun store like mine and do a background check. I would have to charge for that transfer because that's the use of my time and my space and my employees' time. If we're running background checks on transfers as opposed to background checks, making people wait to do background checks on inventory in our store. If the volume of background checks increased and we got overly inundated with background checks, the price for the transfer would have to go up. Again, it's supply and demand. There's so much capacity you have. If it got so crazy like that, I would probably have to add a second employee or even another terminal so that those could all be facilitated. And with that comes more cost for me. But at the end of the day, is that something that I want or anybody else wants? Well, no. The political aspect of me being very pro-gun, I don't want that. And, it's not, again, when it comes to that, I can't speak for everybody. I can speak for myself. And of course, I'm going to say that. You can believe me or not. But no, I would rather be, if we talk about it from a business perspective, I would rather be spending my time in here selling guns that I'm selling, not constantly doing transfers for people's private sales, which they should be able to do on their own. They don't need me to hold their hand to do that. They're living autonomous, legal citizens in the United States. So that, I think that would just create a mess. It really would. That would be a nightmare for everyone. So yes, it would be a lot more revenue for a gun store, but it would be a nightmare. A lot of gun stores, a lot of what they would end up doing is just doing transfers for private sales all day. So take that for what you will there. Anyway, guys, I'm just going to leave it there. I know that was a lot of rambling, but bear with me. It's Monday morning. So anyway, like I said, I'll leave you guys there with that. If you have any questions, please leave those down in the comment section. I will try to get to as many of those as I can. Also, my email address is down in the description. If you have a question, you get a lot more of my attention by sending me an email. YouTube does not always notify me of all the comments I get on videos, so send me a question there and I'll be happy to try and answer that. If I can't get to it right away, give me a week or so to get back to you, or I will put your questions into maybe a question of the week format or a Q&A segment. So working on that. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, and if you want to see more content like this, please subscribe to the channel. I gotta go grab the phone. Thank you guys. Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports, Westfield, Indiana. I will see you next time.